The abandoned Mausoleum Tower. Today we kick off a series of explorations in Scotland of abandoned places we visited very early in our journeys. As our explorations have evolved, we have expanded to cover the history of derelict places, and this is what we aim to do with these previous sites. Our exploration today takes us to an abandoned tower, once home to a rich noble of Scotland and later the resting place of a second line of lords. First built around 1510, the tower was created for the first Lord Elphinstone, named Alexander. Originally a squire of attendance in the court of James IV, he was elevated in 1510 to the title of Lord Elphinstone. Alexander was doomed to go on to fight in the Battle of Flodden in 1513, where he was killed. As he was dressed similarly to, and of the same height as James IV, there was a rumor that his body was mistaken for that of the king, who was able to escape the battle safely. Alexander's title and tower was then inherited by his son Alexander, who would himself go on to die fighting in the Battle of Pinkie-Cleugh in 1547. His son Robert would inherit. Robert would badly manage the estates, and his decisions would lead to his affairs being put in the hands of his grandfather and other relatives. One of these, his brother-in-law, would be charged along with his wife in defrauding him of his income. In 1568, he was forced to relinquish the tower as he still supported Mary Queen of Scots. In 1577, he transferred the lands to his son Alexander and later died in 1602. Alexander would prove to be quite different from his father and rise in stature and power at court. In 1580, he joined the court of James VI of Scotland as his gentleman of the bedchamber. In 1592, he was involved with diplomacy following the murder of James Stuart, the second Earl of Moray. In 1595, the Elphinstone family was in a feud with the Earl of Mar over the murder of the Earl's servant. The Earl carried the body in a banner showing the murder across his lands to protest the deed, but was forbidden to approach the Elphinstones by the king. The quarrel was believed to be a plot to undermine the Earl of Mar, who was the keeper at the time of Prince Henry of England. In 1599, he was appointed Lord High Treasurer of Scotland after Walter Stewart of Blantyre resigned. Possibly due to his newfound wealth, Alexander undertook to expand the tower in 1638, adding a gallery and a new hall. He would die that same year. An inventory of his possessions, held in a sealed coffer of the tower, would include his finest clothing and an old silk beaver hat listed as out of fashion, a number of books, a brass clock, cushions, wine decanter, and glasses. Down the years, the family would continue to hold the tower, with various Alexanders holding the title, until finally in 1754, the ninth Lord Elphinstone, named Charles, would sell the tower and lands to John Murray, son of the third Earl of Dunmore, for £16,000. During the 1800s, the tower would be remodeled, adding Victorian touches. Presumably, this would bring it to its current size of 30 feet by 24 feet, with walls reaching 56 feet tall. Eventually, the extensions to the tower were removed by the 1850s to make room for a nearby church named St. Andrew's. The tower would then become a mausoleum for the Earls of Dunmore. Finally, in 1911, the tower would become abandoned fully. The church itself would later be demolished in 1963, and just 5 years later, the northwest side of the tower would collapse in a storm. Here it has sat ever since, becoming slowly overgrown with trees and brambles. At first glance, the tower appears much as it did on our last visit some 7 years ago. Upon closer inspection, there is now graffiti across the front of the structure and on the door. This is only the newest desecration of the burial site, which some years ago had its doors pried open, the caskets smashed, and the bones stolen. In the burial alcoves, there are still parts of the caskets, though no longer any of the bones we had discovered on our previous exploration here. An inspection of the floors reveals that much of the broken coffin pieces have been removed. We travel up the fallen rubble from a partial collapse of the tower in 1968. Some details of the Victorian restoration are still visible with lathes and window frames. The third floor is also visible with a doorway and window. Traveling back to the base of the tower, one can find among the brambles and undergrowth scattered graves of the Dunmore line, and presumably burials from the church that stood there. Grave robbers have too been busy here, with signs of more smashed coffins, although none of the bones we once saw here. In 2023, new owners purchased this lost tower, and with it the site may yet see a rebirth. For now, it remains a sad reminder of what vandalism can do to an abandoned location, and how history, and even our physical remains, can vanish because of it. Join us next time as we explore further into an abandoned Scotland, unearthing the forgotten past of a once great home and its noble family.